By Sunday morning, all that should have been left at Lake Wren Campground were ashes and fire rings and tire tracks heading back to the freeway. Instead, there was one tent still standing. No car, no cooler, no footprints leading away. Just a gray, weather-worn tent on Site 23, the fly zipped shut, a pair of hiking boots neatly side by side at the entrance. The camp host knocked once. No answer. He called out. Nothing. When he unzipped the flap, the first thing he noticed was that everything inside looked like the campers had just stepped away. Sleeping bags unrolled, lanterns still hanging, a deck of cards midway through a game on the small collapsible table. The second thing he noticed was the smell. Not of death. Death has a sweetness to it you never forget. This was something else. Cold coffee, damp nylon, and fear somehow soaked into the fabric. There were no bodies in that tent, but there were signs that whoever had slept there had left in a hurry and had never made it back. This is the story of Site 23, the campground where one tent was left standing, and an entire family never came home. You're watching Enter the Crime. The Hayes family checked in at Lake Wren Campground on a Friday afternoon in September. On paper, they looked like any other middle-class American family trying to squeeze one more weekend out of the end of summer. Mark Hayes, 39, auto parts store manager. Rachel Hayes, 37, nurse at a local clinic. 2 kids, Eli, 11, and Sophie, 8. They lived less than an hour away in Cedar Grove, a small town where everybody knew everybody, and summers revolved around ball games, backyard barbecues, and trips to the lake. Mark reserved Site 23, a spot tucked near the tree line, with enough privacy to feel wild but close enough to the main loop that the kids could bike to the camp store. The camp host, Frank Ruiz, remembered them clearly. They were just normal, he later told investigators. Polite. The kids were excited about making s'mores. Nothing weird. Mark paid for 2 nights in cash. They bought firewood, a bundle of ice, and a Lake Wren campground patch for Eli's backpack. That evening, neighbors on Site 21 saw them laughing around the fire. Looked like a commercial for happy families, one camper said. If you told me they'd disappear, I'd say you were crazy. By checkout time on Sunday, every site on the loop was empty, except 23. Lake Wren wasn't a big operation. Frank lived on site in a small trailer by the entrance. His job a mix of groundskeeping, rule enforcement, and occasionally fishing lost flip-flops out of the lake. On Sunday, he did his usual rounds. Sites 1 through 20 were clean. Fire pits are cold. Vehicles gone. When he pulled his golf cart up to Site 23, he expected to see the Hayes SUV loaded up, kids half asleep in the back seat. Instead, he found the tent. At first, he figured they'd run late packing and decided to hike one last trail. But the car pad was empty. No SUV, no bike rack, no cooler, not even a trash bag. Frank checked the picnic table, he always did, looking for forgotten mugs or toys. There was a chipped blue enamel mug, still with a coffee ring in the bottom, a half-read paperback. A phone charger was plugged into an outlet on the electric post, the cord dangling in the air. That bothered him. Campers forget things, sure. They don't usually leave chargers still plugged in. He called out, "Mark? Rachel? Checkout was at 11. You folks heading out today?" Silence. Frank walked to the tent, boots crunching gravel. The boots by the entrance were lined up neatly, toes pointing toward the fire pit. He knocked on the aluminum frame. "Anyone in there? You okay?" Nothing. He unzipped the flap. Inside, as he would later describe it, was a life interrupted. 2 sleeping bags, still slightly indented. The kid's duffel unzipped, clothes visible. The lantern hanging from the ceiling hook, battery still at half when he checked. No signs of a struggle, no blood, no torn fabric. Just the feeling that someone had stepped outside for a minute and forgotten to come back. Frank backed out, heart rate picking up. He checked his clipboard. The Hayes family had not checked out. Their payment was for Friday and Saturday only. If they'd decided to extend, they would have told him. He tried calling the number on their reservation form, straight to voicemail. By noon, he'd made up his mind. He called the county sheriff. Sheriff Dana Collier had worked in rural law enforcement long enough to know most calls from campgrounds were about noise complaints, illegal fireworks, or teenagers sneaking in after hours. The phrase "left a tent behind" didn't raise alarms at first. "Probably decided to hike out and forgot it," one deputy said. "Or they're coming back later." But Collier was thorough. She drove out to Lake Wren with Deputy Logan Fry, reached Site 23, and immediately understood why Frank had called. "Nothing about it felt abandoned," she said later. "It felt paused." They photographed everything. The tent, staked properly, has no signs of wind damage. The boots, still relatively dry despite the overnight dew. The picnic table, for camp chairs, too adult-sized, too small. Inside the tent, they found driver's licenses for Mark and Rachel are in a side pocket. 2 kids' backpacks, a small lockbox with a few $100s in cash, a spiral notebook with a grocery list, and on the next page, a simple checklist. Check in, set up tent, hike to overlook, Saturday swim, Sunday pack up. The list stopped there. No pack-up box checked. No back home added. Outside the tent, there were multiple sets of footprints in the soft earth, adult and child sizes, but the ground had been disturbed by normal campsite activity. No clear path leading away. The only obvious trail was the one every camper used, a worn path from the site to the fire ring, and another to the loop road. "Any chance they took off and left everything?" Collier asked. Frank shook his head. "They were talking about school starting up," he said. "You don't ditch your kids' clothes and IDs if you're just taking off." Collier agreed. By late afternoon, she had entered 4 missing persons reports: Mark Hayes, Rachel Hayes, Eli Hayes, Sophie Hayes. The last known location for all 4, Site 23, Lake Wren Campground. The first 48 hours of any missing persons investigation are crucial. For the Hayes case, they were also frustratingly empty. The access road to Lake Wren had only one way in and one way out. The small county-owned stretch of asphalt was covered by a single traffic camera near the intersection with the main highway. Reviewing the footage from Saturday night to Sunday morning, investigators saw a handful of cars leaving after sunset, fishermen, day hikers, 1 RV, a maintenance truck around midnight. No sign of the Hayes silver Honda Pilot after 9:12 p.m. Saturday, when it briefly appeared heading back toward the campground from a trip into town. No plate readers caught it leaving. No witnesses reported seeing it on nearby roads. It was as if the SUV and the family had simply dissolved. Detectives canvassed every gas station, diner, and motel within a 50-mile radius. No one remembered seeing the Hayes family that Sunday. Bank records showed no withdrawals after Friday. No credit card purchases. No tolls. Their cell phones had last pinged off a tower near Lake Wren at 10:03 p.m. Saturday in what looked like normal nighttime data usage. Checking social media, forecasts, maybe streaming something for the kids. Then, nothing. Signal dead. Not powered off. Not airplane mode. Just gone. When digital forensics came up empty, Sheriff Collier shifted focus. If they didn't leave by road, she told her team, either they went into the woods or someone took them another way. The search parties began. For 3 days, the woods around Lake Wren were filled with people. Deputies, volunteers, dogs, drones. The area wasn't vast. Certainly not wilderness in the national park sense. But it was dense enough to swallow sound, dotted with ravines and old logging trails. Searchers fanned out from Site 23, moving in grids. They called the families' names until their voices went hoarse. They found a discarded candy wrapper that matched a brand Rachel had bought at the camp store, a small plastic dinosaur toy, half buried in dirt near a tree, a copper penny pressed into the bark of an oak, Eli's habit according to his grandmother. He believed it brought luck to the forest. But they didn't find the family. No torn clothing. No drag marks. No makeshift camps. Divers scoured Lake Wren itself, just in case the kids had wandered and fallen in. The water was cold and murky. They pulled out weeds, lost fishing lures, and someone's old tire. No car. No bodies. By the end of the week, Sheriff Collier had to hold a press conference. "We are treating the disappearance of the Hayes family as an open, active investigation," she told reporters. "At this time, we have no evidence of foul play, but we also do not indicate that they left voluntarily." Behind the careful language was a simpler admission. They had no idea what had happened. The only solid thing they had was a physical symbol of absence. Tent, still standing. When investigators dug into the Hayes life in Cedar Grove, they expected to find one of two things: either a hidden crisis, financial trouble, affairs, abuse, or a picture of such stability that foul play became the main theory. What they found was somewhere in between. Neighbors described them as nice, quiet, involved with the kids. Mark coached Eli's little league team. Rachel organized bake sales and barely missed a shift at the clinic. Their mortgage was current. No major debts beyond typical credit card balances and a car loan. There were no signs of divorce filings, restraining orders, or hidden bank accounts, but there were stress fractures. Text messages between Mark and a coworker hinted at long hours and pressure from a new regional supervisor. Rachel's search history showed late-night queries, caregiver burnout, how to tell if you're depressed, how much does a week at a cabin cost. On her phone, investigators found a note from a month before the trip. Lake Wren? Just one weekend where we're not on phones, not rushing, not pretending we're okay. Friends said the trip was supposed to be a reset. They weren't running from anything, one said. They were trying to breathe. There was one odd detail, though. 3 weeks before the trip, Mark had taken out a small personal loan, $5,000, from a local credit union. The money wasn't in their accounts by the time they disappeared, and there were no big purchases to match it. When detectives asked why he took it, the loan officer shrugged, said he was doing some home repairs and maybe a surprise for the family. Seemed normal, but nothing in the house had been updated. No new appliances, no contractor invoices. $5,000 had walked out of their accounts and vanished, just like they had. A break in the case, such as it was, came from a source no one initially considered important. A solo camper who'd stayed at Site 24, 2 spots down from the Hayes family. His name was Calvin Mercer, 52. A former long-haul trucker turned wandering fisherman. He checked in late Friday and kept to himself, fishing most of Saturday and leaving early Sunday before Frank did rounds. When deputies first spoke to him by phone, he said he hadn't noticed anything. "Families come and go," he said. "Kids screaming, dogs barking. I mind my own business." But a week later, after seeing the story on television and realizing the timeline, he called the sheriff back. "There was something," he said. "I just didn't think it mattered." Saturday night, around 10:30 p.m., Calvin had been sitting by his dying campfire when he heard voices from Site 23. Not the normal pass the marshmallows chatter. Raised voices. Adult voices. "I couldn't make out everything," he told Bishop later, brought in now for major crimes. But the tone, someone was upset. He heard, "Told you not to say anything. Kids are right there. You can't just make that decision without me." A few minutes later, he heard a car door slam, followed by tires crunching on gravel. He assumed someone from the family had gone for a drive. "What about the kids?" Bishop asked. Calvin thought for a moment. "I'm pretty sure I heard the girl laughing after that," he said, "like they were playing or something, but I can't swear to it. Could have been another site. There was something else." Around midnight, he'd woken to the sound of an engine. "When you've driven trucks as long as I have," he said, "you can tell the difference between a pickup, a sedan, a big rig." This sounded like a van, older, little rough. He heard it idle near the loop, then move slowly. No doors slammed, no voices, just the soft grind of tires and then the fade of the engine down the access road. No traffic camera showed a van leaving. But if someone knew the area well enough, there were service roads, old logging tracks that bypassed the main exit. Bishop circled van 3 times in her notebook. Now, there were 2 big questions. Who left in the Honda Pilot at 9:12 p.m. and never appeared on the main cameras? And who arrived or left in an unseen van hours later? As weeks turned into months, official leads thinned. Unofficial ones did not. Lake Wren had a history, one that wasn't obvious on brochures. Local teens told stories about the tent, a cautionary tale passed down at bonfires, a family that camped there and walked into the woods, never to return. A tent that reappeared exactly as they left it whenever campers stayed too late in the season. Older folks rolled their eyes at the ghost story but admitted something strange. More than one person in town, upon seeing the news about the Hayes family, had a flicker of déjà vu. "We had a family disappear when I was young," one woman told Bishop. "Not here, but at another campground. The only thing they found was the tent. It wasn't the same case. Different state, different decade. But the pattern, a campsite frozen midlife, occupants gone, was enough to feed speculation. Online forums spun theories. Voluntary disappearance. The Hayes family staged a vanishing and slipped into a new life. Serial offender, someone targeting campgrounds, using knowledge of service roads. Cult recruitment. Someone approached them at the lake, promising a better way to live. Law enforcement cover-up. A local deputy is involved somehow. For Sheriff Collier, the noise made her job harder. Well-meaning tips turn into wild goose chases, she said. But buried in the madness, you sometimes get something real. Something real arrived in the form of an anonymous email to the department. "Check the old logging road behind mile marker 7. You missed something." The sender used a throwaway account. The route was dense, overgrown, and technically off-limits. But ignoring it wasn't an option. The logging road behind mile marker 7 had been closed for years. Trees encroached on the cracked dirt path, branches scraping the sides of vehicles that tried to pass. Signs read, "No public access, county use only," though even the county rarely bothered anymore. Bishop, now working closely with Collier, rode in the lead truck. "You really think this is something?" Deputy Fry asked from the back. "I think anonymous tips that reference exact mile markers usually come from locals," Bishop said. "And locals know where bodies get dumped." After half a mile, the trucks could go no further. They continued on foot. The smell hit first. Not fresh decay. More like something that had once smelled much worse. In a thicket just off the road, partially hidden under a tangle of branches and leaves, they found it. Not the Hayes family. The Hayes Honda Pilot. Its silver paint was dulled by dust and pollen. The plates had been removed. The rear window was cracked. Inside, it was strangely clean. No blood, no personal items, no fast food bags or kids' toys. The seats had been wiped down. But two details bothered Bishop. One, the indentation on the rear cargo mat, exactly the size of a large plastic bin. Two, a faint mark on the interior plastic, like tape residue where something had been affixed. This wasn't a joyride. This was a transport. The fact that the SUV had been left and not burned suggested something else. Whoever did this either panicked or expected it would never be found. In the cup holder, under a layer of dust, Bishop saw a small shine. A penny, pressed slightly into the rubber. Eli's habit. He'd done it in the woods. It made sense he'd do it in the car. Bishop felt a hard knot form in her throat. The Hayes family had been in this vehicle after they left Site 23. But where they left it, the road, the woods, the lake, still wasn't clear. As pressure mounted on the department, some began to quietly wonder about Frank Ruiz, the camp host. He was the one who'd found the tent. He was the one who saw every car that came and went. He was the one who'd lived alone at Lake Wren for years. No criminal history, no known issues, but solitude changes people. Bishop and Collier brought him in for a second, deeper interview. "Ever used the old logging road?" Bishop asked. Frank nodded. "Back when I first started. County trucks would use it to haul down trees. Not in years, though." "Know anyone who still goes out that way?" Collier pressed. He hesitated. "There are folks who cut corners," he admitted. "People dump junk out there sometimes. Couch cushions, tires. I've called it in." "Why didn't you mention that before?" Bishop asked. Frank looked tired. "Because people always think the guy who lives alone in the woods must be the creep. he said. I didn't want to give you one more reason. Then he said something that shifted the ground under the case. The Hayes family wasn't the only ones on Site 23 that weekend, he said. At least, not the way you're thinking. He pulled out an old reservation ledger. Not the digital system, but a handwritten backup he kept out of habit. On the line below, Hayes Site 23 to 2 nights, was a note in small, cramped handwriting. Plus 1 vehicle, late arrival, cash. I forgot about them, Frank admitted. A guy came in late Friday night, said he was meeting friends at Site 23, already paid. Gave me $20 to keep it simple. What did he look like? Bishop asked, heartbeat kicking up. Frank closed his eyes, trying to recall. 40s maybe, he said. Beard, baseball cap, one of those cargo vests. Pickup truck, dark blue or black. No kids with him. I figured he was family or something. There'd been no mention of a second vehicle initially. No plate captured on the old, glitchy entrance camera. No record in the digital system. Just Frank's fading memory and a scribbled note. Why didn't you tell us this months ago? Collier asked, voice tight. Frank's shoulders hunched. Because when I realized I'd forgotten, he said, I thought it was already too late, and I thought you'd blame me. Bishop stared at the ledger. Someone had attached themselves to the Hayes reservation, literally. A +1, and that someone was still unaccounted for. Rachel's phone, recovered from the tent, had been a dead end at first. Standard family photos, kids at the zoo, selfies in scrubs, pictures of the tent at Site 23. Nothing obviously sinister. Months later, when state analysts got new image recognition tools, they ran batch scans of all devices in active cold cases. That's when they noticed him. In 3 separate photos, once in the background of a picture taken at a Cedar Grove grocery store, once reflected in a window at a ball game, and once standing near a trailhead sign at Lake Wren. A familiar face appeared. Same baseball cap, same beard, same cargo vest. Always looking just slightly away from the camera. Always alone. He was far enough back that no clear ID could be made, but close enough that it was unlikely to be a coincidence. They printed the images and drove them to Frank. That's him, Frank said without hesitation. That's the guy who came in late. Said he was with them. When they showed the photos to Emma's friend Noah, no, wrong story. Careful. When they showed them to Rachel's coworkers, no one recognized him. He wasn't a family member. He wasn't a known neighbor. He seemed to orbit the Hayes family at random public places, unnoticed by them but captured by chance. Stalking pattern. Bishop, looking at the cluster of red pins on the map, grocery, ball field, trailhead, campground, felt something she'd learned to distrust in her line of work. Intuition. This is not random, she said. This is hunting. Years later, the Hayes case is still officially unsolved. No bodies, no confirmed suspect, no confession, but the file on Bishop's desk is thick. It holds photos of Site 23, tent still standing. Logs of the Honda Pilot were found off the logging road. The reservation ledger with +1 vehicle, late arrival, cash. Blurry images of a man who hovered on the edges of the Hayes' lives. Some believe the family is dead. Their remains hidden in some forgotten patch of woods. Their killer an opportunistic predator who vanished into the background of another small town. Others still whisper that they might have left on purpose, that the van, the mysterious loan, the growing stress were all pieces of a voluntary disappearance. Sheriff Collier retired with the case on her conscience. I see that tent when I close my eyes, she told a reporter once. Standing there like a question nobody can answer. Lake Wren Campground is still open. Site 23 is still rentable. Most people don't know its history. They pick it for the shade, for the quick access to the lake, for the way the trees block out the world. They pitch their tents. They unroll their sleeping bags. They tell ghost stories by the fire. And sometimes, in the morning, when the sun hits the nylon just right, the camp host swears he can see a faint outline on the gravel where another tent once stood. A reminder that in some places absence has a shape, and that sometimes The scariest thing about a crime scene isn't what you find. It's what's left behind, waiting, like a question in the dirt. What happened to the family that never took their tent down? You've been watching Enter the Crime.